Desperately climbing away from an all-consuming ooze doesn't sound like a jolly good time, yet somehow White Knuckle makes it ruthlessly addictive. Thanks to extremely tight controls, a slew of challenging but fair obstacle courses, and a dystopian world so bizarre that I just need to know more about it, White Knuckle has completely devoured my past few days.
Warning, you are not alone.
At its core, White Knuckle is an astonishingly simple game. You can jump, you can sprint, and you can grab onto things with either hand in order to climb. If you're feeling particularly spicy, you can even latch onto ledges with both hands to hoist yourself up faster. What you cannot do is hold on forever, as your titular White Knuckles will quickly start turning bright red, thus warning you that your stamina is running out and that your grip is about to fail. To avoid a grisly fall, you'll need to either find a perch to rest up on, or if safe haven is nowhere to be found, alternate between each hand to buy yourself just enough time to crawl to safety. If you find yourself in a situation where progress looks completely impossible, or if you spot a potential shortcut somewhere in the distance, you can also use one of your limited items to create new handholds on the fly. And considering how this usually involves hurling a piece of rusty rebar straight through thick industrial concrete, I wouldn't be even slightly surprised if it turns out that the player character is actually just Popeye. It would certainly explain how he replenishes his supernatural strength by shotgunning cans of what I can only assume is concentrated spinach. And that is pretty much it as far as the mechanics are concerned. Yet despite how simple it all is, there is a lot of depth, complexity, and skill expression to be found here. And more importantly, a lot of fun as well. Once you get into the right rhythm, there's just something mesmerizing about swinging from handhold to handhold, making snap decisions on when to expend stamina jumping and when to take it slow, or just throwing caution to the wind and taking extremely risky shortcuts purely for the thrill of it. But it is when you're put under pressure that White Knuckle, or Sweaty Palm as it really should have been called, becomes truly transcendent. When there is danger all around you, and when you're desperately trying to survive the onslaught just so you can get a tiny bit further than you've ever been before, that is when the magic happens. It is in these moments that I find that all rational thought just evaporates from my brain. I seem to enter a sort of fugue state where the only things that exist are the next few handholds and the obstacles preventing me from reaching them. Everything else just kind of fades away until I can reach a safe space where I can finally, after a long while, just relax. Take a deep breath and savor my victory. But only for the briefest of moments, as there is always more to climb. It's not just the movement mechanics either, the level design is also rock solid despite being somewhat procedurally generated, on account of White Knuckle being a roguelite. The way it works is that each section you approach draws from a pool of handcrafted levels with a couple of elements randomly added or removed in order to make the levels more replayable. Sometimes this means you'll have to completely change your strategy as there is a really nasty enemy in an unexpected place. Sometimes a pathway you're used to might become more treacherous. And sometimes it might be as simple as you getting a few extra items to incentivize you to take faster, riskier routes. The downside of this approach is that you will eventually see most of the variations, especially in the first two zones, as you'll be frequently climbing through them to get back to the much more difficult later stages of the game. The upside, however, is that all of the areas are actually designed and tested by human beings, which means that all of them, and I really do mean all of them, have a solid flow and work well with White Knuckle's mechanics. So as far as I'm concerned, these light roguelike elements are implemented really well. They add just enough spice to keep each level feeling fresh, but without actually detracting from its quality. And quality is exactly what they are. as each individual chunk seems purpose-built around celebrating a certain mechanic or obstacle type, which makes each one feel unique even though they're all essentially just industrial nightmares. For example, you can ask any White Knuckle player what they think about the ventilator room with the button, and chances are they'll instantly be able to draw a rough layout of the level purely from memory. The individual levels really do stick out, and I think a big reason for that is that they're all at the center of at least one story of glorious triumph or bitter failure. Another aspect of the level design that I greatly appreciate is just how clear and obvious the pathways are. Unless the room you're in is intentionally cryptic to get you to make your own routes with items or just by using the environment, each area in White Knuckle does a pretty good job of drawing your view towards the next series of obstacles, all the way to the very top. This might not sound like a big deal now, but when you're frantically climbing away from the grey sludge of doom devouring everything below you, knowing where to go and how to get there quickly becomes very important very fast. Oh, and speaking of the sludge, that thing essentially serves as a timer to encourage you to push forward and utilize momentum to your advantage over simply playing it slow, safe, and boring. It is genuinely terrifying when it's right behind you, and I have messed up plenty of times because I panicked in its presence. But as far as world-ending eldritch horrors go, it's actually quite alright. You're never under that much pressure, so once you've gotten accustomed to the movement mechanics, you'll only ever have to deal with it when you screw up really, really badly, which is still preferable to simply getting annihilated and sent back to the start menu. That said, you're still going to get quite familiar with the start menu. While White Knuckle is generally extremely fair with its challenges, it does not shy away from presenting you with some truly devious gauntlets. I like to think I am fairly experienced with its mechanics at this point, and even still, I find myself dying in the second or third zone very often because it is so easy to slip up, and then panic instead of salvaging the situation, only for the entire mess to end when you just dunk yourself directly into the carnivorous sludge. However, while it may be punishing to the careless, White Knuckle is not cruel. The challenge ramps up relatively slowly, and all of the crazy trials you'll have to beat later have very clear routes in the fairly easy levels at the very start. So just by trying and failing, you'll put in a decent amount of time into practicing the basics. So while it might seem very annoying having to restart the game every single time you kick the bucket, the process of learning how to speedrun those first few sections is exactly what will make you better at tackling the wildest hazards White Knuckle can throw at you. There's only one exception to all of this, and it is essentially my only real complaint with White Knuckle. When you're climbing and you jump, you'll expend a fair bit of stamina in order to leap upwards, which is exactly as you would expect. But when you do that near an incline, there is a chance you just launch yourself backwards, which is almost guaranteed to be a run-ender. Whether this is a mechanic I just don't understand or some sort of a bug, I have no idea. But even though I have learned how to work around it, I still don't like how jarring and unnatural it feels, especially when the rest of the game is just so buttery smooth.
Within acceptable parameters.
While it is easy to overlook it since you'll be hard focused on trying not to lose your grip while climbing, White Knuckle has a really surreal and surprisingly compelling world. The visuals, the audio, the screen effects, all of it gives off this grimy, dirty, dystopian atmosphere of true hopelessness. Nothing ever feels right. Even when you reach areas that have been untouched by whatever calamity has befallen the facility, it still doesn't feel comfortable, or even like a place where you can just sit down and rest. Instead, it all feels like a facade. Something hastily slapped over a gaping wound in the universe in the hopes that just kinda not looking at it will make the problem go away. The story is similarly incomprehensible and mostly comes from environmental clues and the occasional announcement message. But there is enough interesting elements to it that I am slobbering to learn more. It is obvious that some kind of an experiment went wrong and now there is an apocalyptic sludge rising from below. But what in the world are those ungodly noises that we sometimes hear from above? Is the sludge the reason the facility is collapsing, or is the collapse the reason the sludge escaped? Is the beast above us a completely unrelated experiment that also went haywire? Are we one of the experiments? If you're looking for an answer to any of this, I am afraid that I have no idea. Like, not even a single clue. But like I said at the very beginning, I am very eager to learn more because this nightmare that White Knuckle calls reality is genuinely fascinating. The final, and perhaps most important note, is that White Knuckle has only just released into early access. So while it already has an immense amount of content, and polished content at that, it is not even close to being finished. And in an era where early access games can release straight up broken, that really is quite impressive. So if everything I've shown you thus far has piqued your curiosity, I would heartily recommend you give White Knuckle's demo a try. It spans the game's first 3 sections and offers way more gameplay than you would expect, so it should also give you a pretty good idea of what the full version is like. Enjoy, and I hope you end up losing yourself in it just like I have. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this, or even if you didn't, please do let me know. If you'd like to see more, make sure to subscribe, hit the stupid bell, pet your evil sludge, and do whatever other nonsense you gotta do these days. Thank you for sticking to the very end, and I hope that you have a lovely day. Bye bye.